Well, one thing is the Celtics and their story on the road. It's been well documented. They got one win in Philadelphia in game number 3. The other games, most of those games, they haven't even been in the game. They are not the same type of team on the road. But how the Cavs got it done in game number 4 was making shots early, getting off to the fast start so the role players can play with confidence. And LeBron James playing a great all-around game. Especially offensively, was really special. Very, very rare you're going to be able to score that many points, which he did in 44 and only shoot the ball 28 times. You don't see it too much in the NBA. So LeBron functioning at a high level, being very, very efficient offensively, only needs a little bit of support. And at this point in the series where teams are starting to figure out what the other teams are doing, the young genius, and some people call the best coach in the NBA, doesn't seem like he can get the type of looks that he's getting for them offensively that they got in the previous 3 series and games 1 and 2 in Boston. So those are the stories where we are. That's how Cleveland gets win number 2 in game number 4 last night.
All right, so I want to address things Chris mentioned in reverse order. Start with Brad Stevens. The reality is Ty Lue has made some adjustments in games 3 and 4 that Brad Stevens has not adjusted to. This game was lost in the first quarter. In that first quarter, Al Horford got 2 shots. That made it 6 total shots for the Celtics' best player in the 5 opening quarters being played in Cleveland. They were outscored by 46 points in those opening 5 quarters in Cleveland. That is an adjustment Brad Stevens needs to figure out how to make, where the Celtics have been at an enormous advantage all year long, where I've talked about them starting games up essentially 10-0 before the ball is tipped because of how they're going to be out of timeouts. Ty Lue is playing him to a stalemate out of timeouts, and the Celtics have been awful where they are typically great. That end of the quarter stuff. Understanding time, score, situation. There was a play last night where Stevens is screaming for his guys to take it out. They don't. They end up, Jaylen Brown, I think, ends up missing a dunk, goes back down the other way. So execution-wise, they haven't been as good as they had been in the postseason home or away, but particularly at home. On LeBron, it was an odd LeBron game. Only 3 assists. 7 turnovers, most of them totally needless turnovers, trying to make the A triple-plus pass when he didn't need to. But the way he scored those 44 points, it was methodical, and it was if you watched the game without ever checking a box score, I don't think you'd ever thought he had 44, because he never had one giant burst. He had 11 in the first, 11 in the second, 13 in the third, 9 in the fourth. It was, if such a thing exists, a quiet 44-point game from LeBron, particularly because he wasn't also getting other guys involved with the assists. And then lastly, the Cavs played 1 great quarter of defense. They played a great first quarter of defense. Then I thought they lapsed back into a lot of their bad defensive tendencies that had hurt them in Boston. But when you win the first quarter by 15 points and the other team's offensively challenged, it's going to be hard for them to mount a sustained comeback.
Have the Cavs figured out now, do you think, how to beat Boston, how to deal with their adjustments, how to contain Al Horford? Is this the kind of play you're expecting to see now when it shifts back to Boston?
I mean, it's a great question. I thought that even though they lost game 2, and going back, looking at game 2 yesterday before game 4 was played, I thought that Cleveland gained some control, even though they didn't win game 2. They played 192 minutes, Jenna, and the Celtics have trailed 122 of them. So it's 2-2. And sometimes it's when you get the wins and when you get the losses. But I would say right now, the Cleveland team, in a 3-game series, Cleveland is in more control than I think I do. I trust them a little bit better. Yes, I do, because I believe they can win 1 game in Boston. And what the Celtics has shown me on the road, I don't think they can win that 1 game coming back to Cleveland, game number 6.
To see broken down by a minute-by-minute standpoint, but the Celtics won the first and second half of game 1 and the second half of game 2. So there have been 8 halves of basketball. Those are the 3 halves the Celtics won. Cleveland controlled the first half of game 2, and they've controlled every part of the games, except for a stretch in the fourth quarter yesterday, of these 2 games back in Cleveland. And once again, And this is what is, I think, concerning for Boston. Boston loses game 3 because the Cavs go 17 of 34 from 3. Yesterday, they only make 8 threes. Yesterday, they turn the ball over nearly 10 times more than Boston. Much like game 3. LeBron gets all this help, but no one gets even 15 points. And so it was a multitude of players chipping in, 7 here, 9 here, 11 here. But Kevin Love had a bad game, saved 2 plays in the fourth quarter. JR, for the second straight game, yeah, he hit 3 threes, but that was the entirety of his offensive contributions. It's not like the Celtics are being slayed by, well, Love went 25 and 18 and there was just no answer for him. The Cavs are getting a little bit from a lot of guys, and they've had 2 consecutive really good LeBron James games.
One thing that's been a big difference is the overall energy of the Cavs and how much energy they're exerting on the defensive end. If you say, well, what is the difference with them not playing? They play defense like a team that could try to win a championship. They have in those 2 games in Cleveland. You mentioned after that first quarter, the big first quarter, not necessarily the defense you'd want to see the other 3, but in the 8 quarters that they've played in Cleveland, big difference in the energy output on the defensive end.
So then then you look at home court advantage, and if that is really such a thing, or if the Celtics got outplayed and will continue to get outplayed as this series moves forward. It seems from watching the game, yeah, maybe no one else had a ton of points other than LeBron, but they kind of figured out how to contain the Celtics.
Well, Terry Rozier's a big problem for the Celtics right now. I understand Rozier, he had 16 points and 10 assists.
Statistically, he had a decent.
But he shot terribly from the field. He made some awful decisions. And defensively, if he's on the court, he is the mismatch every single Cleveland Cavalier is going after.
Yeah.
And if Rozier's not out there, Shane Larkin's hurt, now you're in a situation, is Marcus Smart going to play the point? Or are we going to ask Jaylen Brown to play the point? The Celtics, I think everyone at this table would agree with this. I'm almost certain Brad Stevens would agree with this. The Celtics play for their season on Wednesday. Like, if they lose on Wednesday, that's a wrap for them. The Cavs can lose Wednesday and potentially be okay. The Celtics play for their season Wednesday. Not a lot of time between, as we sit here Tuesday morning and the game Wednesday evening, to make the counter adjustments to Ty Lue's adjustments.
Yeah, and that first half of the game in game number 5 becomes the most important half of basketball in the 2017-2018 season. Because as we saw, the momentum, when the game switched game 2 to game 3 in Cleveland, we saw Cleveland take control of what now we know to be 2 games. We only saw the first half in game number 3. Can the Celtics do that in game number 5? I believe is very, very
so
important.
LeBron James gets a quiet 44 points, if that is
44.
such a thing, and this series is tied at 2 games apiece.